in the oldest quarter of the world, where the mountains held the sky like a quiet promise and the valleys drank moonlight like water, there was a town that had almost forgotten the night. It was not that darkness had vanished. Evening still came, lanterns were still lit, and children still watched stars appear like silver seeds scattered across velvet. But in that town, no one truly feared the fall of dusk, for it was said that the king beneath the mountain kept all greater darkness contained. His name was spoken rarely, and then only in whispers, not from terror, but from the weight of old respect. Elena grew up listening to those whispers. Her grandmother would sit by the window each evening, fingers busy with mending, and tell stories of the king in the caverns below. "He is no mere man," she would murmur, "nor is he quite what our words can hold. Some call him a vampire, some a spirit of the oldest night. I think he is merely very, very tired." Elena would lean against the sill, watching dusk soften the rooftops. "If he's so tired," she asked once, "why does he not sleep?" "Because he made a promise," her grandmother replied. "A long one. Someone had to keep the oldest hunger locked away, so he signed a contract with the world. Until the document's last day, he will keep it in chains." "And when is the last day?" Elena asked. Her grandmother smiled sadly. "No one remembers. It was written in numbers so large that they felt more like a legend than a measure of time. Perhaps it will end when the mountains themselves sit down and rest." Years passed, as they do, quietly and quicker than anyone expects. Elena's parents grew ill one winter, a silence slipping into their lungs that no herb or prayer could chase away. The town healers tried, the traveling physicians tried, but the sickness clung like a forgotten shadow. Elena sold what little she had to buy medicines that did nothing but empty her pockets. Every night she sat beside their bed, listening to their strained breaths and thought of promises. Her grandmother had died by then, leaving only a handful of stories and a locket that never opened. One story in particular kept returning, the one about the king who made a contract with time itself. "If such binding is possible," Elena whispered into the dimness one night, "perhaps another contract can be written, one that trades years for healing." The townfolk would have called the idea foolish. They tolerated the king's legend like a distant thunder, real, but too far away to change their days. No one went to the mountain. No one called upon the king. The old paths to his domain were overgrown, more memory than road. But desperation has a way of turning memories into maps. On a night when the moon was thin and the air clear as glass, Elena kissed her parents' foreheads, wrapped her grandmother's shawl around her shoulders, and slipped out of the sleeping house. She carried only a candle, a small piece of bread, and the locket pressed to her palm, for comfort rather than use. The path up the mountain was quiet, not in the way of emptiness, but in the way of waiting. Rocks, pine trees, and patches of snow seemed to hold their breath as she passed. Once, she nearly turned back when the wind howled low like a voice. But then she remembered her father's faint smile, her mother's fingers clinging weakly to her hand, and she went on. By the time she reached the old carved archway at the mountain's base, her legs trembled, and her candle had burned low. Ancient symbols traced the stone, worn yet faintly glowing with a pale, steady light of their own. As she stood there, wondering whether to knock or pray, the locket around her neck grew warm. The archway opened. No hands moved the stone. No chains rattled, no gears ground. The solid rock simply softened, becoming like fog, and parted before her. Stairs led down, smooth and broad, lit by torches that blazed without fire, just a calm, golden radiance that cast no smoke. Elena descended, heart unsteady but strangely calm. The deeper she went, the more the world above felt like a dream she had woken from. The air in the caverns was cool but not cold, touched by the scent of ancient earth and something faintly metallic, like iron left in rain. She entered a great hall carved entirely from the mountain's heart. Its ceiling arched high above, veined with crystals that caught the torchlight and broke it into threads of color. At the far end stood a throne of dark stone and silver, and upon it sat the king. He was nothing like the monsters in the frightened stories, nor entirely like the sorrowful hero of her grandmother's tales. His hair fell like moonlight down his shoulders, silver but not old, and his eyes held the red echo of a long sunset that will not quite yield to night. His clothes were rich but worn at the edges, like ceremonial garments used so often their splendor had learned humility. For a moment, they simply looked at one another, she, a mortal girl clutching courage in shaking hands. He, a being who had watched centuries rise and fall like the tides. "You came," he said at last. His voice was low and even, carrying more resonance than volume, yet it held no threat. It was the sound of a distant bell. Elena swallowed. "I did, my lord." Her own voice sounded small in the great hall, but it did not echo. The stone seemed to listen politely instead. "I have come to ask for a contract." "Few remember those," the king replied, regarding her with quiet curiosity. "Fewer still come seeking them. What do you ask, and what will you give?" Elena hesitated, then stepped forward. She told him of her parents' illness, the failed remedies, the dwindling days. She spoke without ornament, without flattery. There was no point in pretending her pain was anything more or less than what it was. When she finished, the king did not answer immediately. He seemed to weigh each of her words, turning them gently in an unseen hand. "You wish for your parents to be healed," he said at last. "Yes," Elena whispered. "I would give my life if that is what it takes." His gaze softened, though the change was almost imperceptible. Mortals are quick to offer their lives when desperation holds them, but life is not so easily traded. It is not a coin but a story, and stories ripple outward. What if your life is needed for something else you cannot see? Elena thought, then squared her shoulders. "Then let it be my time, my years, all of them. I ask only that they live." The king studied her for a long moment. Then he raised one pale hand, and the air before them shimmered. A parchment appeared, unfurling like a sigh, its surface already inscribed with lines of small, neat writing in a language she did not know, yet somehow understood. "This is a binding contract," the king said. "If you sign it, your parents will be healed before the next dawn. In return, you will enter my service for a term of 1,000 years." The number pressed against her mind like a vast, slow wave. 1,000, she repeated faintly. "Not all as you understand years," he added gently. "Time flows differently here. You will serve as my scribe, my companion in solitude, my witness to the turning of ages. You will not age as mortals do, though you will not be untouched by time. Loneliness is the truest cost." Elena's hand trembled, but she reached for the offered quill. Before she could touch it, he spoke again. "There is one rule that must be observed above all others." His eyes, red as old embers, met her steadily. "You must never fall in love with your king." The rule fell softly between them, almost delicate, yet it vibrated in the air like a plucked string. Elena blinked, startled. Of all the dangers she had imagined, blood, chains, endless labor, this quiet prohibition was the last she expected. "Why?" she asked. His gaze grew distant, as if looking through layers of time. "Because love changes contracts, and there are ancient words written beneath mine that must never be stirred. If love is given where it is forbidden, an old curse awakens. The darkness I contain would be loosed, and the world would remember why it once feared the night." She thought of her town, asleep under calm stars. Of children learning the shapes of constellations without ever wondering if the sky might turn against them. Then she thought of her parents, their weak smiles, their hands seeking hers even in fevered dreams. "I do not know you," she said simply, "and I have no wish to disturb what you guard. I only want them to live. I accept your rule." He searched her face, perhaps for doubt, perhaps for some shadow of future regret. Finding none that he could name, he inclined his head. "Then sign, Elena of the Valley, and know that once written, this cannot be unwritten." She signed her name. The ink sank into the parchment like water into dry soil, and a quiet warmth flowed up through the quill into her fingers, then her arm, then her chest. For a moment, she felt as if her heart had two beats, one swift and human, one slow and echoing, aligned with some older rhythm in the stones around them. Far away in her sleeping town, 2 breaths deepened, 2 pulses steadied. The king's contract kept its word. So Elena's 1,000-year term began. The days within the mountain did not rise and fall as they did above. Instead, there was a gentle, continuous twilight, neither truly day nor night, touched by the soft radiance of the crystal-veined ceiling. Time moved like a slow river instead of like a stream tumbling over stones. Elena's first tasks were simple: reading aloud from old records so the king could hear what he already knew, checking that the seals on ancient doors remained unbroken, learning the quiet, precise language of binding spells. She slept when she was tired, ate when food appeared on the long stone table like a quiet kindness, and explored the caverns when the king retreated into thought. He was not an unkind master. In truth, it did not feel like servitude at all, but rather like sharing an enormous, echoing library with someone who had forgotten how to speak softly. He listened more than he spoke. When he did speak, his words were measured and gentle, never raised in anger or command. He corrected her when she misread an inscription, but always with patience. "Again," he would say, tapping the text with a long finger, "the third sigil is not binding but belonging. The difference matters. One holds, the other embraces." He asked little of her beyond care and attention. Yet in the pauses between tasks, in the quiet that lay like a rug over the hall, she began to see how deep his solitude truly ran. "Do you ever leave the mountain?" she asked him once as they walked along a balcony carved into a cavern wall, overlooking a lake of still, dark water. His expression did not change, but something in his shoulders loosened, as if the question itself were a relief. "Not in the way you mean. My presence beyond these stones would unsettle things best left settled. I am tethered, a king of a very small realm." "It doesn't seem small," she replied, glancing at the vast cavern. He followed her gaze. Size is a strange measure of freedom. In the years that followed, years that hardly brushed her skin, though they ran deeper in her heart, they settled into a rhythm. Elena read aloud from Chronicles of Forgotten Kingdoms. The king, who finally told her his name was Darius, shared stories not written in any book. He spoke of stars that had fallen and become mountains, of rivers that once flowed backward, bringing the sea's memories to the land. She told him of small things: her parents' laughter, the smell of baking bread, the way her grandmother would hum when she thought no one listened. She told him of the market square, of the stray cat that had adopted their doorstep, of how the town clock sometimes chimed the wrong hour but no one minded. "You miss them," he observed one evening, as she closed a volume and stared at nothing in particular. "I do," she admitted, "but I do not regret my choice." He nodded. "Regret is a heavier chain than service. I am glad you are spared it." Little by little, almost without noticing, Elena stopped thinking of him as the king in the secret corners of her mind and began thinking of him simply as Darius. He remained distant in some ways. There were rooms he never entered while she was present, names he would not speak, but he also revealed small, surprising kindnesses. Once, seeing her shiver, he conjured a cloak of soft, dark fabric that held the warmth of an embrace. Another time, when she tried to hide her tears after dreaming of her parents, he pretended not to notice, then later left a small pot of honeyed tea steaming by her bedside. It was during one of the long, quiet reading sessions that Elena first noticed the contract's script had changed. The parchment rested on a pedestal of stone in a side chamber, its words usually steady and unaltered. But that day, as she passed, The lines of text rippled, as if stirred by a wind she could not feel. "Darius," she called. He appeared beside her more quickly than she expected, silent as shadow, yet as substantial as stone. His gaze went immediately to the contract, and something like concern tugged at his composed features. "The letters are restless," he murmured. "What does that mean?" Elena asked. He did not answer at once. Instead, he touched the parchment lightly. The ink stilled, but its black seemed deeper, as if layered upon itself. "You have been here many years," he said slowly. "I suppose so," she replied. Time blurred in the caverns. She measured it now by the number of stories told rather than by seasons. "Why?" "Because," he said, and for the first time she heard something like weariness truly enter his voice. "The contract responds to threads between souls. If they grow warmer, it stirs. And when it stirs, so does what lies beneath." Elena felt a faint chill, though the air remained the same. "Are you saying the curse is awakening?" Darius withdrew his hand. "Not yet, but it is no longer sleeping as deeply as before." She looked at him, truly looked, setting aside titles and old tales and the distance of fear. She saw then the lines at the corners of his eyes, not of age, but of long endurance. She saw the way his posture always held a kind of readiness, as if he stood between two worlds at all times and could not fully rest in either. She realized, with a gentle and undeniable clarity, that she cared for him. Not as one cares for an employer or a distant benefactor, but as one heart begins to care for another, without asking permission or checking contracts. The knowledge brought both ache and warmth. "I remember your rule," she said quietly. "I have not forgotten it." Darius's gaze flicked to hers, and in it she saw a reflection of her own sorrow. "Rules are easy to speak," he said softly. "The heart is a less obedient scribe." After that, an unspoken awareness lay between them like a thin layer of frost, delicate, beautiful, and unable to bear too much weight. They continued their routines, still reading, still walking the balconies, still sharing stories, but both avoided lingering too long on the subject of feeling. One evening, as they stood by the underground lake, its unmoving surface mirroring the crystal-streaked ceiling, Darius said, "If the curse awakens fully, the darkness I hold will spread. It will not come as noise or flame, but as a gentle forgetting. People will lose the memory of kindness, of restraint. Hunger will grow where compassion once healed. It will be slow, but sure." "And this is bound to love?" Elena asked, her voice barely more than breath. "Bound to misdirected love," he answered. "Once, long ago, I broke a promise for the sake of affection. I unbound something that should have remained sealed. Many suffered. To mend that wound, I accepted this contract. I became the lock on the door I had once opened. The clause was added. That love for me must never again disturb the balance." Elena was silent for a long time. A small ripple touched the lake's surface, though no stone had been thrown. "Do you regret that love?" she asked at last. He closed his eyes briefly. "No, I regret only my blindness to its consequences. Love itself is not the enemy. Unseen ripples are." Her heart ached for him, for the loneliness of his throne, for the way he carried the weight of an old mistake as if it were woven into his very bones. "Then what are we to do?" she whispered. "Pretend we do not feel what we feel, deny it until the 1,000 years pass." "The contract is clear," he replied gently. "If it senses love growing between us, the curse awakens. If we sever that love, it sleeps." The words hung between them, sharp in their softness, simple in their impossibility. "How does one sever love?" Elena asked. "It is not a rope to be cut." "No," he agreed, "but it can be given a different shape." She looked at him, searching his face. "What do you mean?" He turned to face her fully. The red of his eyes seemed deeper in the half-light, but it was a warm red now, like coals beneath ash. Love that clings awakens the curse, he said. Love that releases might unbind the contract itself. It was written with fear, Elena, with the belief that attachment always leads to failure. But if instead of trying to possess or be possessed, we choose to set each other free, perhaps the contract's deepest lines can be rewritten. How? Her voice trembled. By a sacrifice, Darius replied. Not of life, but of desire. If you choose to walk away from this bond before the 1,000 years end, not out of rejection but out of compassion, for me, for the world, the contract will face a paradox it does not know how to contain. It may shatter, or it may transform. And if it shatters, she asked. Then the darkness and I are both freed, he said calmly. What happens next will depend on what we carry in our hearts at that moment. Silence followed his words, long and deep. Elena looked at the still water, at the quiet crystals, at the man beside her who was both prison and prisoner. To stay with him meant warmth, companionship, the quiet deepening of affection that had already begun. It also meant holding him here in chains he had accepted, but chains nonetheless, while a sleeping curse shifted uneasily in its slumber. To leave meant loneliness for herself, and perhaps for him. It meant stepping back into a world that had long since grown and changed without her, as a stranger among people who did not remember her name. It meant giving up the small, profound comfort of their shared twilight. What do you wish? She asked him softly. He smiled, and the expression held sorrow and gentleness in equal measure. I wish for the world to be safe. I wish for you to be unburdened. What I wish for myself is less important. That is not true, she said. Your wishes matter. Then I will tell you, he replied. If it were only my heart at stake, I would ask you to stay. Your presence has been a light in this stone-bound life. But because it is not only my heart, I ask you to choose with compassion, not only for me but for all those who sleep above us, unaware of our choices. Elena closed her eyes. In her mind, she saw the town. Children chasing one another around the square, her parents walking together under the evening sky, older now perhaps, but alive. She saw strangers she had never met, each carrying their own small joys and quiet sorrows. She saw Darius, alone on his throne of stone and silver, watching centuries pass. Her heart twisted with love, not the kind that demands or clings, but the kind that aches to see another unchained. When I signed your contract, she said slowly, I thought I was giving up my future to save 2 lives. But the years here have shown me that every life touches many others. If my leaving can mend more than my staying can comfort, then I must go. She opened her eyes. Darius watched her, his expression very still. Is this your choice? He asked. It is, she replied, voice unsteady but clear. I choose to set us both free if the contract will allow it. They returned to the chamber of the contract together. The parchment lay on its stone pedestal, its letters now shifting subtly, as if sensing the flutter of their decision. Place your hand upon your name, Darius instructed gently, and speak not a renunciation but a blessing. Release your claim on this bond with gratitude, not resentment. Elena laid her hand over the ink of her signature. It was cool to the touch, yet she felt a faint pulse beneath her palm, like a heartbeat in paper. Thank you, she whispered, not only to the contract, but to the years, to the lessons, to the quiet companionship she had known. For the time given, for the love found, for the chance to choose again. I release this bond not because it was wrong, but because it has grown beyond its walls. May what we shared become light, not chains. As she spoke, the parchment warmed. The ink of her name dissolved, rising in delicate black threads that twisted into faint, shimmering smoke. The other words began to blur as well, their strict, narrow lines softening, curves appearing where once there had been only angles. Darius placed his own hand beside hers. And I, he said, release you from service and from sacrifice. May your days be your own, and may the love we have known walk with you as kindness, not as weight." The contract shivered. There was no thunderclap, no burst of fire. Instead, a deep, resonant sigh filled the chamber, as if the mountain itself exhaled after holding its breath for an age. The parchment folded in upon itself, its edges curling inward like drying leaves, then simply dissolved into light. That light did not flare. It drifted outward, gentle as dust in a sunbeam, seeping into the stone, the air, their skin. Elena felt something uncoil within her. A tension she had not realized she carried. Perhaps the contract's grip on her spirit loosened and fell away. In its place was a quiet spaciousness, like a room in which windows had just been opened. Far below, in depths she had never seen, old chains rusted and fell. The darkness they held did not rush upward in hunger. It lingered, tasting the change, then softened, thinning like fog touched by dawn. For it was bound not only by words, but by the heart that had accepted its burden, and that heart now beat in freedom, not in fear. Darius stepped back, looking at his bare hands as if seeing them for the first time. "It is done," he murmured. "The contract is no more." "And the curse?" Elena asked. "Transformed," he said slowly, as if listening inward. "No longer a locked beast, but a shadow that will always remind the world to be gentle with its power. There will still be darkness, as there must be, but it will not hunger in the same way. It will listen." He turned to her, and in his eyes she saw gratitude, sorrow, and something like wonder. "You have done what I could not," he said. "You have rewritten a promise through compassion." "We did it together," she replied. They stood there for a while, simply breathing. The caverns felt different, lighter, though the stone was unchanged. The air carried a faint scent she could not name, like the memory of rain in a place that had never known it. "What happens now?" Elena asked eventually. "Now," Darius said, a small, genuine smile touching his lips, "we are no longer bound by years or rules. You may leave this mountain whenever you wish, or stay if you choose as a guest, not as a servant. And I," he glanced upward, toward the unseen sky, "I may walk beneath the open night without fear." She felt a tug, of love, of habit, of curiosity about the changed world above. She also felt a quiet certainty that this moment needed to be a true parting, not a half measure that would tempt the old patterns to return. "I think," Elena said softly, "that I must go back. I left my life unfinished. My parents, if they yet live, they have lived many years without me. If they are gone, there may be grandchildren or only stories or nothing at all. Whatever waits, it belongs to me." He nodded. "I understand." She hesitated, then stepped forward and for the first time embraced him. He stiffened slightly, unused to such unguarded touch, then relaxed, his arms folding around her with a care that made her throat tighten. "This is not forbidden any longer," she said, half laughing, half crying. "No," he agreed, voice low near her ear. "Now it is simply goodbye." "Not forever," she replied, "just for this part of the journey." When they parted, there were unshed tears in both their eyes, though neither tried to hide them. Some goodbyes deserve witnessing. Darius walked with her up the long staircase, the torches dimming behind them as if bowing farewell. At the archway, the stone parted once more, revealing the night. Stars spilled across the sky, a sky far more crowded than the one she remembered. Constellations had shifted, new patterns emerging where old ones had faded. "The world has turned many times since you left it," Darius said. "Do not be afraid of its strangeness. Carry into it what you have learned here." "What if I am forgotten?" she asked quietly. "Then you are free," he answered. "Free to meet it anew without the weight of expectation. Remember, your worth is not measured by who recalls your name, but by how gently you walk among them." She stepped through the archway, the mountain air crisp and cool on her face. The grass beneath her feet felt softer than any carpet of stone. She turned back once. He stood in the threshold, framed by ancient rock and soft, inner light. Without his throne behind him and his contract before him, he looked less like a king and more like a man who had carried a long burden and was learning how to relax his shoulders. "Thank you," she said again, though the words felt small. "Live well, Elena," he replied. "Let your days be your own." Then the archway sealed, stone becoming whole once more, hiding the caverns and their quiet legend from sight. Elena walked down the mountain. At its foot, she found a road that had not been there in her memory, paved with smooth, pale stones. Travelers passed now and then, their clothes different from any she had known, their speech marked by new turns of phrase. Some looked at her curiously, but most simply nodded in passing, seeing only a woman who had walked a long way. In the town she once called home, she found no house exactly as she remembered it. Time had rebuilt, burned, rebuilt again. Yet in the market square there was still a fountain, though its carvings were new, and above it hung a simple plaque. "In gratitude," it read, "to the unknown one who went to the mountain and bought us time." No one knew her face. No one knew her name. Yet the story of a nameless girl who had once bargained with the king beneath the mountain had become a gentle legend, told to children on nights when the stars shone especially bright. Elena sat by the fountain and listened as a grandmother repeated the tale, her voice warm. "They say she signed a contract of 1,000 years," the old woman told a circle of wide-eyed children. "But in the end, it was not the contract that saved us. It was her heart. She chose to let go of what she loved so that all of us might keep what we did not even know we were losing." One child frowned thoughtfully. "Is it sad," he asked, "that she had to leave the king?" The grandmother smiled. "No, little one, it is simply true. Not all love is meant to hold. Some is meant to free, and in that there is a different kind of happiness." Elena felt tears slip down her cheeks, quiet and unashamed. She touched her grandmother's old locket, which lay warm against her skin. At last, it opened easily beneath her fingers. Inside was a tiny scrap of parchment, long faded, bearing only 3 words in a careful, ancient hand. "Love rewrites contracts." She laughed softly through her tears. That night, as she lay beneath a sky alive with unfamiliar stars, Elena felt no chains upon her spirit. She did not know what tomorrow would bring: work, friendship, perhaps one day another kind of love. But whatever came, she would meet it with the gentle strength she had found in the caverns, the strength to choose, to care, and when needed, to let go. Far away, upon a hill overlooking another town, a man with silver hair and eyes like old sunsets watched the night in quiet wonder. He felt the wind on his face, unfiltered by stone, and listened to the distant hum of human life. There was no contract binding his steps now, only the steady, self-chosen duty of one who remembers what darkness can do and chooses, again and again, to walk in light. Thus the legend endured, of the woman who signed a 1,000-year contract and forgot, not the rule, but the fear behind it. In remembering instead the simple, stubborn power of compassionate love, she and the king beneath the mountain rewrote not only their own fate, but the world's. And somewhere, in every act of kindness freely given, and every love strong enough to release what it holds, a small echo of their choice still lives, quiet and enduring as a heartbeat in stone.